All right, we're set. They could be here any second, so look sharp.
Always do.
Power Rangers, a pop culture icon with a 30-year legacy, just released a reunion special on Netflix called Once and Always. The intention is to celebrate the 3-decade-long run of the show. Throughout the years, Power Rangers has grown and evolved. What started off as a fun, goofy kids show grew heart and character. Fans were enamored by the interconnected stories and possibilities the show offered. But with many of these fans now into their adulthood, this special was a love letter. A classic argument towards the quality of Power Rangers is that it's a kids show, and while it's transcended beyond that label, in recent years, it's somewhat regressed. But with Once and Always, the kid gloves are off. Aimed at the longtime fans of the show, does it hold up? Or is it just more of the same? Don't forget to leave a comment telling me what you thought of the special. I do read every one of them, and I enjoy hearing from you all. Also, leave a like. Now then, spoilers ahead. You've been warned. Go watch the special before you watch this. I won't be going over the story beat for beat like I usually do, but when it comes to story, it was pretty solid. Simple, yet solid, which isn't a bad thing. Mario movie. You would think they'd go out and have a complex storyline, but they kept the scope small, which I liked. At the start of the special, we begin with a flashback. Billy fights original series villain Rita Repulsa, now with a robotic face. The other 5 Mighty Morphin Rangers teleport in: Zach, Jason, Kimberly, Tommy, and Trini. Zach and Billy are the only ones to appear unmorphed. The rest of the voices are sampled from archive footage. Rita is particularly deadly, psycho pink levels of deadly. She tries to blast Billy, but he's saved by Trini, who takes the blast, sending her off a cliff to her death. Yes, death. Death is a thing. In fact, they don't hide it here at all. As Power Ranger fans will know, the show usually refrained from using words like die or death, usually preferring to use the word destroy.
The power coins were destroyed, which means morphing could destroy you.
Ironically, Adam says killed here.
Drag racing's illegal, not to mention the fact that you can end up getting yourselves killed.
Then a little girl straight up says the word in RPM.
Are we going to die?
Not today.
And I'm not even counting the times that they imply death, like, oh, you're alive.
Can I help you, Ranger?
Obvious. You're alive.
Sorry, I had nowhere else to share these moments where they broke that rule, but needless to say, when they dropped the trailer and they began outright saying kill and die, it threw a lot of fans. A simple change in verbiage, but it does make the special feel different. Anyway, Billy and Zach are at Trini's house, contemplating how they break the news of her death to her daughter, Min. This scene is genuinely heartbreaking. If you've read the comics, and comic spoilers here by the way, although it's been out for years, it's similar to Tommy's death to Lord Draken and the emotional toll that it takes on the Rangers. It's really uncomfortable to see them go back and forth on a really sensitive matter, all for nothing though as Min walks in. From here, you can tell it's heavy. There's a time skip. Zach and Min prepare for the 1-year anniversary of Trini's death, and as they approach Trini's grave, they overhear the others morphing, calling out their iconic dinosaurs. Jason, Tommy, and Kim are captured. But Billy, Zach, and Min all escape on Billy's new and approved Radbug. It's goofy, but it was in the original show. It was Billy's flying car. From here, I won't go over the plot details too much, other than Rita's hunting down Power Rangers, and Billy, with the help of Alpha 9, sends out a distress call to the other Rangers. They also call in Rocky and Kat to fill in for Jason and Kim. Adam and Aisha also appear in the special, but are stuck on a spaceship because, I'm not sure if you've heard, but there's a pilot shortage. Thanks, United. The rest of the special is their journey to bring them back and Min's desire for revenge against Rita. The actual story itself, I thought was good. As I've said, it's simple. Where it's a bit interesting is the writing/execution. The now adult Power Rangers are dealing with problems with more logic and really show that they've matured, in contrast to Min, who's very headstrong, going in as a teenager with attitude without a second thought. This leads to her making mistakes. I loved it, and it was definitely a highlight. The stakes feel real, and I like that they didn't baby around as Power Rangers usually does. There was actual emotional conflict between Billy and Min, but for me personally, this should be the baseline for Power Rangers. We've done it before, and it's nice to return to it here. It's just not something new. But again, happy to see it. Where it falls off is in pacing, especially at the start. Things felt a little fast. I think a little breathing room, especially after going through the scene where Min finds out about her mom, would have done well to illustrate the weight. As it is, she walks in with the timing of a comedy. I think it's all down to the editing.
Ow! Ow!
There were even a couple times during the special where it felt even physically too fast. In fact, they literally start the emergency call to all the Rangers and immediately teleport Kat in, only for her to imply that it's been minutes, and Zach even counts her down by the second beforehand. Huh, didn't know we were watching the Time Force special. A relatively minor problem, but there's a lot of cheese going on in the special. Something many fans noticed were the suits. It seems they've updated them. The cuffs and the boots now have new detailing on them. Even Tommy's armbands are different. It's neat, they didn't need to go to that effort, but one thing that bugs me is the collars. I pointed out the collars at the end of my last video, check it out. It's a really odd choice. It seems that, despite being oriented towards older fans, the cheese factor still remains, so much so they recreated the wardrobe era from the 90s. And of course my lactose intolerance gets no break, because this also extends to the dialogue.
Are you breakdance fighting?
Many of the lines are very Power Rangers, plenty of moments where characters have awkward lines.
We cannot let the putties run rampant any longer.
Not a ranger? Not yet, you mean?
Now we know Rita's on the moon, right? So why not let's just go there?
Something that really stood out to me with this was the effects. Power Rangers effects have always looked goofy, but you'd think they'd steer away from that here. No, it's just as whimsical as it was in the 90s, just more awkward. I can understand wanting to recreate the charm of the effects, but our standards as fans, or even as a general audience, have evolved. It's much higher. Add to that, everything's in high definition now, so imperfections are much more obvious. While it wasn't as common in the original Mighty Morphin, wire work or wire fu became commonplace in later seasons. I'm not totally against it. When used well, I think it's great, but you'd think that after going to the lengths to be like the early 90s show, they'd try for a little less of that. It's cheesy, but the reason I bring it up is for one moment early on. The wire work for Trini's death scene, I'm sorry, it lost all levity on me. She literally levitated and spun in place for a few feet in front of Billy. Probably could have tied her down or something so she wouldn't go off a cliff. But again, this is the same franchise where Rocky did a roundhouse kick so hard he fell backwards out of a fighting ring. A lot of the general VFX were great. I loved the new teleporting effect, the effect when the putties were defeated was neat. I also really enjoyed that they turned invisible with a simple hard cut after using Billy's stealth tech. Sometimes, simple is really the best way to do it. Also, it would have defeated the purpose if it were flashy. Totally something Power Rangers would do, especially in later seasons, so I'm glad they didn't. But some of the VFX were just bad. I'm sorry, the morph looked a bit off. I think here it's a matter of composition. The lightning backgrounds are very bright, where the original was a bit more muted, or at least it wasn't as noticeable. It blended into the background because it was the background. The characters also seem a little bit close to the camera, though it could just be the lens that they used made the shots look really depth heavy, but I could be wrong. Kind of reminds me of when you use a wide-angle lens really close to someone's face.
Mastodon! Pterodactyl! Triceratops!
Take off. Fruit roll up.
Finally, there's the Megazord VFX. It was nice to see the Megazord. It's much better than the awful 1995 movie Megazord and the 2017 movie Megazord in terms of design, but it's very cheap looking. And yes, the original did too, but the models just don't seem to look right. They seem quite uncanny. I figure it's the shading on them, also the Megazord is somewhat dummy thick. I made a whole Twitter thread about it, going into more detail, just wishing that they could have used the original suit, which I pointed out was available. Also, follow my Twitter, please. Or else. Then there's the audio. Was it just me, or did things sound weird? Especially Kat's ADR.
Like your hairy friend said, a surprise.
It felt a bit tinny, but I can't quite place it. It might just need some more EQ. Now, there's some really good things in this special. It's an emotional journey for sure. It's very character heavy. While Rocky and Kat don't do as much, Billy, Zach, and Min really shine. Billy, the once brainy nerd and cowardly tech expert, is now the confident owner of a tech company. He dedicates his time to find Zordon, creates backup power coins, works on the Zords, establishes an emergency protocol for all Rangers. He more resembles Jason or Tommy, but with his added quirk of being knowledgeable and technically proficient. To a fault. His own drive and growth was what led to Rita's return. It's clear he blames himself for Trini's death. Min had a bit more of a predictable growth, but it was a welcome one. I like that she wasn't just a carbon copy of Trini, so she had to learn from her own faults. She's very revenge-driven, maybe a little too much, because she puts herself in danger without a plan.
Hey, Carnage, do you know Candace?
But I like that her journey towards being able to morph was to channel her mother's signature trait, her selflessness and care for her friends. On to Zach. Uncle Zach. Congressman Zach Taylor. Oh my god, he was so good here. He and Billy have some disagreements at the start with how to break the news to Min, considering even lying to her. You'd think that that'd be a bad thing, but I think it shows a lot of empathy that he has for Min now that Trini's gone. That doesn't go far, of course, but he even moves in, becoming her legal guardian, parenting her, giving her advice. They established that he'd since become a congressman. I know the comics canonicity is up in the air, but I can see him wanting to do that, even after the Omega Rangers space romp, but he eventually gives it up to be a guardian to Min. Let's talk about the music. Y'all know how much I care about the music in Power Rangers. If you don't, watch my video about it here. This special really worked for me thanks to them bringing back original Power Rangers composer Ron Wasserman, and his scores are amazing. We actually never got to see him score something like this with orchestrals and other incidentals outside of the Shattered Grid trailer. The original show used a lot of rock sounds, and later seasons would go more orchestral. Here, it has a nice mix and the music fits each scene so well, which is a big problem I've had with the series since 2003? Even the rock themes during the fights are good and not overpowering and in your face like in some of the recent seasons. No insert songs though, but I'm fine with that. The special is, well, special.
You make me feel special.
Overall, it's a really fun ride from start to finish, and as a Power Rangers fan, I really enjoyed it. But an interesting piece of discourse I wanted to talk about was a review by IGN. A few people in the Power Rangers Twitter sphere were buzzing about it. In my opinion, it's not that bad of a take, and the reviewer brings up some good points. They came to a final rating of 6 out of 10. This, obviously, coming from a major nerd culture publication, is a bit disappointing to hear as a fan, but it does highlight an aspect of the special. This special is for fans. IGN's review is for general audiences. If you've been keeping up and watching Power Rangers for the past 3 decades, it's exactly what you'd expect, and it's great. It's right up our alley. But think of it from the perspective of someone who hasn't kept up with the show, but wants to revisit the world for old time's sake. It's certainly not something that would be up to general standards. At the end of the day, we shouldn't care about a review. If we like it, we like it, but that doesn't mean it can't spark discussion. This was an opportunity to bring back an audience of people outside of the fandom, but it didn't accomplish that. This isn't a slight to the production team. They did much more than they generally are used to than the series. It's the same crew, but it just wasn't digestible enough for a general audience. There were some aspects of it that grew up and others that felt cheap, cheesy, or forgotten for the sake of capturing nostalgia. One line from the IGN review that I absolutely agree with was this.
But if we're expected to overlook problems like a nonsensical story and missing cast members, it would have been nice to see the Rangers in action as we fans remember them in our minds rather than as they actually looked in the 90s.
As for my thoughts, despite its flaws, this was a really sweet story and a wonderful tribute to Thuy Trang, the actress who played Trini who died in 2001. And the special was filmed before his death, but there was even a tribute to Jason David Frank in the credits, which was a nice touch. It had room to improve, I won't deny that, but I'm choosing to focus on what's good. What would I rate it? Just slightly above IGN with a 7 out of 10. You're probably thinking that's a bit low, right? I mean, it's passing. I think the special was a step in the right direction, but it's not without its flaws. I want to encourage the franchise to do more of this, but still want it to work its way up and elevate the quality. Right now, all we've got left is Cosmic Fury. Jonathan Entwistle's project is still nowhere to be seen. Hopefully they announce something about that soon. Until then, we'll take what we can get. Thanks for watching. I really rushed to get this one out. You'd really make my efforts worth it by leaving a like and commenting. And don't forget to subscribe. If you want to hang out with me, you can join my Discord or come to my Twitch streams. Links in the description below.